This is 2024's A Family Affair. Warning, spoilers ahead. Chris Cole is one of America's most eligible bachelors, and Zara is his assistant. Zara is very late for work, and after checking out traffic in the area, it's clear that she's going to be even later than she anticipated. Meanwhile, Chris is dealing with his current girlfriend at brunch, and she keeps assuring him that she's not needy in any way. Chris keeps checking his watch and the door, and it's clear that he's waiting for Zara to rescue him from this date. Zara speeds her way to the restaurant, and she manages to get a box into his hands just in time for him to break up with Ashley. Well, that was a big misdirection because that definitely looked like an engagement ring box, and I'm pretty sure Ashley thought this was going in that direction too. Chris breaks up with Ashley, and he gives her a pair of earrings as a farewell gift. After that fiasco, Zara gives Chris a ride, and she's trying her hardest to ignore his terrible ranting. Along the way, Zara calls him out for being nervous about his upcoming film, and they both agree that the script is trash. He tells her to be at her house early in the morning to work, and he has her go to Ashley's to pick up his belongings. Meanwhile, Zara's mother, Brooke, is showing her writing content to her own mother-in-law, Leela, and it's clear that she's worried about getting back out there after being away for so long. We find out that Brooke's husband, Charlie, has died, and Layla thinks that she should write about him if she plans on moving forward with her career again. Later that night, Chris calls Zara because he can't sleep. I couldn't imagine being the assistant to a needy celebrity who hasn't even stepped foot in a grocery store in over a decade. The next morning, Zara asks her friend Stella if she'll fix Chris's script so that she can get her own script made. Stella doesn't like the idea of rewriting another writer's work, but she agrees to it anyways. Then Zara heads to Chris's house, and she finds that her code doesn't work anymore. Chris is mad that she was late this morning, and while he's furious about her shortcomings, Zara is even more frustrated about working for him. Zara has lost it now, and she climbs the gate just to tell him that she's quitting. Oh snap, if that's not the way to rub things into his face, then I don't know what is. Chris chases after her to try and convince her to stay, but the more they complain back and forth to one another, the more they drive each other away. In the end, Zara storms out of his house after telling him what she really thinks of his dumb action movie, and she finally takes a deep breath when she makes it back to her car. Zara heads home to meet up with her friend Jeannie, but she doesn't tell Brooke about how she quit. Zara feels like she's messed up, but Jeannie thinks that this is the best decision she's ever made. Later, Zara finally tells Brooke about quitting, and Brooke ends up turning the situation around on her as she calls her a quitter. Zara feels like she's just picking on her over the situation, but neither of them really has an answer for the other. Meanwhile, Chris seems to be living a pretty good life with his dogs. Apparently, one of the lines in his movie was having Action Santa shooting terrorist elves. I'd say that's a pretty bad movie. Chris heads to Zara's house to ask her to help, but he finds the door cracked open. He ends up running into Brooke as she's doing some spring cleaning, and he decides to wait for Zara to come back. Chris starts drinking some tequila while he's waiting, and Brooke decides to keep him company while he waits. Chris reveals that he's there to beg Zara to come back, and Brooke couldn't be happier to hear this. The two of them continue talking about Chris's crappy action movie, and he finds out that she's a writer. He finds out much more about her life, like how her husband died 11 years ago. Wow! Brooke and Chris waste no time in opening up to each other. I feel like they're opening up more to each other in a couple hours than most people do in 2 years. Ah! They kiss! This is going to be as awkward as possible when Zara finds out. Oh god! Zara walks in on them, chokes on a grape, and knocks herself out. Brooke takes Zara to the pediatrician, and Chris comes along for the ride. This becomes a little problematic when the pediatrician gets a little caught up talking to Chris, but everyone makes the best of it. That night, everyone gets back to Brooke and Zara's house, and Chris asks Brooke to step out for a moment. Now that they're alone, Chris offers Zara the associate producer spot on his upcoming movie. Zara tells him that the adventures with her mom have to stop, and she agrees to come to work tomorrow. The next day, Chris starts working on the new movie, and he's already having trouble with his director. Zara, on the other hand, seems to be getting used to her new position, and she handles all of her responsibilities with ease. Ah! Sneaky Chris is messaging Brooke, though. Is Brooke really going to betray her daughter's trust? Yep, she most definitely is. And she's going to get all dressed up for it, too. Brooke shows up for dinner with Chris, and it looks as though he has reserved the entire restaurant for the two of them. Chris is amazed by how good Brooke looks. Meanwhile, Zara and Stella sit down to talk about revisions on the script, and Zara has no idea that Brooke is having such a romantic time with Chris. Chris is so confused as to why he's so open with Brooke, but he thinks that there's just something special about her. Brooke thinks that they shouldn't sleep together again, and Chris hopes that they can still be friends. It's now that he realizes that he doesn't actually have any friends, and he thinks that the fame has a lot to do with that. After dinner, Chris takes Brooke to the studio to go for a walk and to mess around. While they sit on one of the sets drinking, Chris shows that he's actually taken the time to read some of Brooke's stuff, and the two of them end up getting really close and personal. So much for not letting this happen. Zara is about to quit on both of them when she finds out. I don't really think that Brooke is the best option for who should break the news to her. When Brooke gets home, Zara is waiting for her on the couch, and Brooke opens up to her about how she feels about Chris. Brooke doesn't tell her about how she slept with Chris again, and now she's calling Layla to ask her for advice. Layla thinks that she should live a little, though, and Brooke decides to keep seeing Chris a lot. I mean, they're playing backgammon on the beach, for crying out loud. I'm pretty sure that Chris is taking this very seriously. One day on set, Zara decides to translate for the director, and she puts a little bit of her own personal touch on the direction. Chris feels like Zara is putting her own emotions into the direction, but he thinks that the criticism is real. When Zara gets home, Brooke is rushing out of the house, and she's acting rather suspicious. It turns out that Brooke is attending a benefit with Chris as his +1, and back at the house, Zara finds out that Brooke is the writer that Chris picked to revise the script. Zara isn't standing for this though, and she takes Jeannie to the benefit to spy on Chris and Brooke. When she finds them making out, she puts them on the spot, but Brooke thinks that it's time to put her in her place. Brooke explains to Zara that this is her time to feel something again, and in the end, Zara decides to move out because Brooke won't break things off with Chris. Zara's emotions are definitely legitimate, but I'm definitely Team Brooke on this one. It's time to live a little. Oh, damn! Chris drops the love bomb when he calls Brooke later that night, and that's amazing. I don't think he's ever said that to anyone. Zara talks to Jeannie a little more in the morning, and it sounds like she's going to come back to her house after the holidays. Meanwhile, Brooke and Layla are talking about inviting Chris to the house for Christmas, and Layla is definitely Team Brooke. Layla tells Brooke to get Chris there, and she says that she'll work her magic on Zara. Layla tries to open Zara's eyes to how selfish she's being, and soon Chris shows up. Zara is not happy about this, but Layla swears this is for the best. The family seems to be happy with each other's company, and Chris loves feeling like he's part of something he hasn't had in a long time. By the end of the night, Layla tells Brooke that she loves Chris, and she can tell that things are getting kind of serious. Considering the fact that Chris has already told her that he loves her, I'd say things are beyond a little serious. Brooke tells Layla that she's worried about going through the same thing that she did with Charlie, and she opens up about how they had problems before he died. Layla wishes that Brooke had told her this about her son, and she wishes she could have shared this burden with her all these years. Layla doesn't think that Brooke should live her life in fear of how badly things could go. She thinks that she should enjoy what's coming so long as she's happy with what she's got. Zara has been listening the whole time, and she seems to be having a change of heart with Brooke and Chris's situation. The next day is Christmas, and they all pass out gifts. Chris hits it out of the park, and later, everyone says their goodbyes to Layla. Zara feels really good about everything, but then Zara notices the breakup earrings that Chris hands out to people when he breaks up with them, and now she's worried. If Zara would just stop snooping, everything would probably go better for her. Maybe he's going to give Brooke the earrings and actually keep dating her instead of breaking up. Zara needs to have an open mind. When Zara gets to Brooke's house, she tells Chris that he shouldn't stay, and she confronts him for fooling everyone. Zara mentions all sorts of things that Chris has made her do, and Brooke is a little surprised to find out all of these things. Then, Zara shows that she found the earrings, and she asks Brooke if Chris took her to the set for a date. Now, Brooke is starting to believe Zara that this is all a big ruse, and she asks Chris to leave. After Chris leaves, Brooke tells Zara that she can't believe that she went about this the way that she did, and Zara heads to Jeannie's house. It turns out that Jeannie is having her own problems, though, because her and her boyfriend broke up. Even worse, it turns out that Jeannie and her boyfriend broke up before Zara went to Layla's, and Jeannie just didn't think that she would care about her own news. Finally, a wake-up call for Zara. She's too selfish, and Jeannie is letting her know that. Zara decides to go for a night drive to stay with Mila, Chris's maid. After a few days, New Year's comes around and everyone is celebrating on their own. Zara decides to think about Jeannie for a moment, and she decides to celebrate the new year with her as a better friend than she has been. The next day, Zara heads to the set for filming, but there's an issue with Chris. Zara heads to Chris's trailer to check in on him, and she finds him slumped over depressed. Chris feels like he should be playing the bad guy since he's treated everyone who loves him terribly, but Zara assures him that he just does bad things sometimes. Chris tries to defend everything that Zara mentioned was a problem, and it's clear that he wasn't actually being a bad guy with Brooke. Everyone is moving forward on their own path, and even Zara is warming up to Chris now. It's a little too late for that though, considering the fact that Brooke is apparently moving to Princeton to teach. Granted, Chris is rich and famous, so I don't really think the distance would stand in the way. Zara heads to Brooke's house as she's packing things up, and she tries to convince her that she was wrong about how Chris feels about Brooke. Zara apologizes for being so hard and taking up so much of Brooke's energy, but she's thankful for her being a great mom. She also apologizes for standing in the way of her and Chris, and she thinks that she should stay and be with him instead of running away to Princeton. Later, Zara takes Chris grocery shopping, and he's amazed that he's not being swarmed by adoring fans. He's actually relieved to be able to do things for himself again, but things take a turn when Brooke shows up thanks to Leela convincing her she needs something. Sneaky family! We all know that Zara was behind this, and I'm surprised it took Brooke as long as it did to figure it out. Here comes the happy ending. Zara explains that this relationship should be allowed to continue, and she encourages them to follow through with it. After Zara steps back, Chris lets Brooke know exactly how he feels, and the two of them pick up right where they left off. The two of them kiss in the produce aisle, and the Aura cues the produce misters. Zara heads outside to chill with Layla, and they celebrate a job well done. A year later, everyone is living their dream, and Zara and Chris are working pretty well together. Then the credits roll. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.